Okay guys, the next step, we've got our ferrule all glued on now and it's set. So what I'm going to do is fit the EVA grip, which we're going to also fit some leather to and do some ramps on and that. So you might see I've got a piece of EVA here that I've cut at the length, a determined length, and I've put it in the lathe and recessed the EVA so that that'll give me somewhere for my leather strap to sit. And you can see that it's raised up here where the ramps are going to be. Once I get this fitted up, we'll put it over in the rod lathe and we'll shape those ends. I'll show you how to do that. You'll also notice that I've got a coat of epoxy on that. What I do with that is when I take it over to the other side, it's all dry obviously, take it over the other side, I give it a light sand. That creates a key for the next layer of epoxy and the leather grip to be all glued together. Creates a full seal around it so you won't get any water in there and bugger up the gluing. So that's the way I like to do it. Anyway, so what we'll do is we'll get on and glue this grip on. So what we need to do is we slide the grip down until it hits the blank, which is about there. So basically just put your finger there and you'll need to start your glue back a little bit from there. So, and I'll show you why we do that when we get to gluing it on. So I basically just the glue down the blank, make sure you've got a little bit up the top here, thicken it up a little bit at the top there, and I'll show you why that is in a minute. Alright, so that's plenty of glue. Like that's going to keep that grip in place, no problem at all. Alright, so what we'll do is we'll stand this rod up and we'll throw this grip down onto the ferrule. I'll show you how we do that. Alright, so we've got our glue on the blank there now, and we're going to prep this grip so that we can throw it down on the blank and have no restrictions. So just basically a little bit of metho down the grip, which acts as a lubricant. I'll just sort of swirl that around inside the grip until it's all nice and slippery on the inside. This won't affect your epoxy whatsoever, it'll evaporate away. Alright, so bring it down, and you'll remember I put a bit of extra glue there and the grip is not hitting the blank yet, so I'll basically roll that glue around on the inside of the grip. So I'll get a bit of a coating there, and then it's just a matter of throwing it down. Simple as that. And it's glued in position, so I'll grab a rag and clean that excess glue off, and then we'll take it over there and we'll shape the ramps and fit the leather grip to it. Righto guys, next step, we're going to fit this leather strap to this recess in the EVA grip that we fitted up before. So the way to do that is I've got this epoxy here, like I said before, that's all dried now, and I'm going to first step, I guess, I'll hang the strap over the side, and what we're going to do is create a bit of a key here. So one thing you'll notice is this rod spinning perfectly true, which is all to do with how we fitted the ferrule up there. So we just give that a light sand. That gives somewhere for the next layer of epoxy to sit. So I'll just get a rag and wipe off the dust. Okay, so we're ready with that. And the next step is that we're going to cut the leather to the right angle so that we can get our wrap going up the rod. And I already know the formula for that's pretty simple. Go back to what we used to do in grade 3 or 4 pi. So if we measure the diameter of this, multiply it by pi, that'll give you the circumference. And I know in this case it's 95 mil long, so the strap's going to lay like that. So what we need to do is cut 95 mil along this hypotenuse, I guess you'd call it. So actually I'm going the wrong way. I need to, let me see, it's got to go like that. So it's 95 mil from this corner down to there. Right, so easy way of doing that is just get yourself a ruler that's got measurements on it, and you can probably start, I don't know, 5 or 10 mil back from the end of the leather, and lay the ruler down on the leather until you've got the 0 point on the front one and the 95 mil point on the back one, and then it's just a matter of with a sharp razor blade cutting, and that gives us our start point. The other thing that you want to do once you've got that start point, roll it over like that, and you can see on the back of the leather strap that they've got a chamfer on it. Okay, that basically lets it all sit down nice and snug. So what we have to do to get it to sit into that corner properly, we need to just shave a bit of a chamfer. Again, nice sharp razor blade. I'm sort of working back the front here to get it into the camera. That's okay. So we're just putting a bit of a chamfer on here that'll allow the end to sit down nice and snug at the end. Okay, so next thing that we want to do is we start, just hold it in place with your finger there and wrap it around. Okay, well, it's jumped out a bit on me there, but that's okay. Right, so we're doing an overlap of about 3 mil on the leather, and I'm just going to do a trial fit up all the way down, making sure that we've got an overlap. And we always want to wrap from the bottom to the top and keep the joins facing down. That way, when the rod's sitting in the holder, going along and it's a bit rough out there and you're getting some spray, that it's not going to sit in the top and get itself inside the leather grip. It shouldn't do anyway, because we're going to make a full seal with an epoxy. But it's better off having all the joins pointing down, and that way they won't hold water. Alright, so we'll get to the end here, and then where it hits the recess there, we just get our trusty marking pen here and we'll put a little mark on it, if it'll work for me. There we go. And you can follow the same rule and cut it at 95, but why not? We're at the end here, so we'll just wrap it around until that point there hits there. Put a little mark on that. Undo it, and then repeat the process. So we'll cut this off at our 2 marks there. Okay, so using a sharp razor blade, just be careful, make sure everything's nice and firm and don't cut your fingers off. Haven't quite gone through that, that's okay. Alright, so again, I'm going to lay this over and put the same sort of chamfer on the back end, just so it sits down. It's not vitally important, because we're going to trim the top of the leather anyway. You'll see that when we get to the next part of it. Okay, so that's very good. That's the back end. Right, so the next step is that we need to put some glue on, and I've pre-mixed some of this, exactly the same epoxy I'm using here, a high strength epoxy that's good for high temperature as well. So all I'm doing is just lay it on. Okay, so what I'm not going to do though is I'm going to leave the epoxy about 3 or 4 mil short of the ends, and I'll show you why that is, and then I'll just run the stick along it, make sure we've got a smooth, reasonably even layer of epoxy all the way along there. I'll just put a tiny bit more on here. Okay, well, there we go. Alright, so now we get to wrapping this around, and to start it off, the reason I left this 3 or 4 mil here is we use like a really high quality super glue, so you can buy that pretty much anywhere, and I just run a bead of it right in the corner. And the reason that we can do that is that it won't when you glue this end down now with the super glue, it'll stay where you want it to. So just make sure we get it fairly straight to start with. Get it right into that corner there. Now I don't have to bother about holding it down anymore. Don't worry if you get a little bit hanging over the edge there. That's pretty easy to get rid of when we get to the end. So again, try and wrap it with the same overlap that you had when you did your trial run. Make sure that we have got an overlap. That's very important. And I'm using an even, firm pressure. Don't rush this. You've got plenty of time with your normal epoxy glue. You don't want to use a 5-minute epoxy on this. You want to use like a long acting one that takes, you know, some hours to cure. So we're getting close to the end here again now. So what I want to do is the same thing as what I did at the front. So we're going to put a small bead of super glue. This will hold all this in. You don't need to worry whether the super glue is going to hold this forever, because once we shape the ramp and seal it and then epoxy and then bind up over, we have no issue whatsoever. So we lay it in the recess there. Don't worry if you've got a little bit hanging over the edge there. I'll show you how we can get rid of that shortly. Sometimes the tag end's a bit of a bugger to get in there, but if you get it in there and get it sitting on that super glue, it'll all hold in position. And again, if it pops up a little bit, don't worry too much about it, because we can fix it. I'll just put a drop underneath there, hold it all in position. Okay, so basically we've got a nice firm, nicely spaced leather grip on there. So the next step that we want to do that, again, the super glue is going to hold that in position. It's not going to fall apart on us while we're waiting for the 2-part epoxy to dry. So the next thing I'm going to do is grab my sandpaper, and we're going to shape this grip so we get a transition from the leather down to the blank. So this is a fairly simple thing to do. Normally I have a vacuum cleaner running, sucking up the dust off this, but it might interfere with the sound on the video, so we'll just give that. Bring this in a little bit closer, so we'll get this spinning pretty quick. And okay, so there's no rocket science about this. All we're doing is basically creating a smooth transition from the leather down to the rod blank itself. You can go with whatever shape suits you. But, I like to have a little sort of half-rounded transition, if you like. It's all right. I didn't do the clamp up tight enough. Okay, that's pretty good. Similar thing on the back. Not playing the game, doesn't want to stay in there. Tighten it up a bit more. Okay, that's getting somewhere near the money. Righto, so what I want to do, remember I said we had a little bit sticking up here, not to worry about it too much, so get the trusty sharp razor blade again, and basically you can just go around and trim the leather, or chamfer it if you like. And again, you don't need to be super neat with this, because remember we're going to epoxy up over it. We'll seal it first and then we're going to epoxy up over it, and then later on it gets bound. So there's a fair bit, and I'll show you that a little bit later on when we get further along the process. So pretty much I'm reasonably happy with those. And the next thing that we're going to use is good old-fashioned thread filler. You remember back in the dim dark ages, when before epoxy was around, we used to use filler and lacquer on our rods. Well, this is just the filler, and what this does is it basically it seals the EVA, and if you don't seal the EVA, then when you go to epoxy over it, you're just going to get endless bubbles coming out. So I just apply this with my finger. You can actually use a brush if you want to. And so just go, 4 or 5 mil past the end of your leather, and pretty much put 2 coats of this filler on. Let them dry in between, half an hour to an hour in between. Once you've done that, give it a couple of hours to dry after that, then you can epoxy the ramps. Okay, so it's just a normal finish that you would use on your rod, and you would put a coat of finish, try and transition it up, so you get that nice transition off the blank up to the ramp. And then once that's done, we'd also need to fill both sides. You've got to seal and fill both sides of your EVA. So that'd be the first coat on there. I might as well stick a coat on the back side here as well, and I'll set this one aside, and then we'll bring another one up that we've done earlier. Okay, so once again, you don't have to be too neat with this. The aim of all of this is to seal the EVA off to stop it bleeding air bubbles through the epoxy finish. Alright, so basically there you go. We've got a first coat of sealer on the ramps. We've got the grips fit, so I guess the next, we'll move on to the next step, and we'll show you what we're going to do next.